Experiences.
Yep.
Move on down the line.
My name is Kevin. I run a youth ministry innovation center in Boise, Idaho, and my background is more on program development for behavior models, and we use games and things like that for creating faith encounters and different life experiences. So that's me.
I'm Chris. I started Soma Games a while back, and I'm still doing that. So I operate on the business side, but primarily as a game designer, as a hacker.
My name is Kenny Reyna. I've been in the industry for 10 years now. Worked on big budget games. Currently working on the next Call of Duty that's coming out. And before that, just various studios and various games that you may or may not have heard of up and down California. So.
Ray Wade, 10 years in the business, level designer, game designer, technical designer, camera designer, design director, held all those positions, and just love design and glad to be here with y'all today.
I'm Lorene Wells. I've been working with volunteers, creating MMO visions for about 11 years now. I've also created a racing game called Chariots, card game called Messiah, a board game called Treasures in Heaven that was one of our contests here at Cgdc, and an Elvish language app called Tarik LN. And I'm still working on birds. We're in our fifth engine, and finally in Big World. Big World's the answer. Also working on another project as producer called Pantheon. It's a secular game, but it's led by a Christian, so I'm able to have some influence there. And I'm also helping my children develop their own game projects as well. I can't think of anything else, but if you think of something, you can ask me.
I'm Katie. I came into the industry working on MMO with a team of 7, which was not the smartest decision ever, but it was a great learning experience. I then moved on to Disney Social Games and worked on a canceled game, and then Disney City Girl, and most recently Marvel Tactics, which just released, and realized that I was just working for money and decided I couldn't do that anymore. So I quit a couple months ago, and I've been doing a little bit of contracting with Rockview, another social game company that bought all of the games that weren't making enough from Disney, and that's how they make their money.
I'm Ryan, and I'm working on That Dragon Cancer, and we have a team of 5 right now, part-time, full-time, and I'm really interested in the area of, I'm going to call them testimony games, of games that tell your story, that are meant more for inviting people to see the world the way we see the world, not necessarily the goal of teaching them.
And I'm Seth. I've been working in the game industry since 2004 on a variety of different projects, board game, card games. I'm here to poke and prod the audience if you guys are too quiet. I'll poke and prod them. So, first initial question. You're on. But you must stand up.
Okay.
State your name, clap your hand. No, you just
Now, Mike Herrera, quick question for all of you, a really important question. What is the biggest obstacle that you faced, and how did you overcome it? With emphasis on how did you overcome it?
Hi, Kevin, you're on.
Yeah, I'll start. So like I said, my focus is on incorporating innovation concepts into the faith journey. So we use games a lot for immersive storytelling. And so yesterday, no, it was Thursday, I talked a little bit about how we're trying to get kids to help create stories of the Bible through games like Minecraft and Second Life is another one that we haven't started yet, but it's in the works. And so, there's some different dynamics there, but I think one of the challenges I've encountered is the idea of immersive platforms that have traditionally been, there's a lot of addictive behaviors that come out of that culture, and so, I encounter parents that are very resistant to what we're doing. So there's some education and influence that needs to occur to kind of bring people into those conversations. And so I think, in the context of the church with a capital C, I see, gaming is really just another mechanism for storytelling. A lot of the biblical narrative is that, but I would assume that a lot of those of you that are in game design would agree with that. But I see a culture shift that we're kind of on the verge of starting to break through in terms of resistance to some of these high immersive platforms for the purpose of biblical storytelling. People just don't understand it, is what I'm trying to say, and so they have to see it to get it, and that's pretty consistent with corporate innovation programs. Innovation is always different from traditional processes and programs, and so theoretically it's not about consistency or predictability. It's about doing things completely different and against the grain, which is why a lot of companies aren't very good at innovation and deriving sustainable programs that create high value outcomes. And so we're trying to do that within the church, in the context of the church. But that would be my answer: is the culture challenges. I'm talking about the faith culture. Just trying to get people to understand the importance and the value of immersive storytelling platforms, which I think games are part of that.
So you've been overcoming that by showing them that.
Yeah, it's showing it through our Center of Innovation, letting kids kind of drive it. It's not me going out telling people, hey, yeah, this is what we're doing. And so people just need to see it. They need to see it in person. Once they see it, they come to our lab, they look at what the kids are building, they see what they're learning about the geography of the Bible, because like I said, the scope of our Minecraft project is 100 cities of the Bible. It's the complete terrain map of the earth, and so we're trying to essentially visually represent the entire land of the Old and New Testament in a game experience. And so it's just fascinating to see kind of the instant click in their minds once they see it. But you talk for months leading up to the project. Chris is talking about investors. Same kind of thing. Is there definitely is a generational gap, I think, in terms of kind of those that are over 50. It's a real challenge. They're the ones that have all the money. We're trying to get money from them, to help support our projects. And so it's a challenge, and we're still working through some of that. So I don't know if that touches enough on what your question is.
Ray, how about you?
I think the interesting part about what you were asking, which was how have you overcome it, that you probably touched on at the end there just right. We're still working through that part. I went to the Art Institute of Orange County, California, game art and design, and I came up with an idea, a Christian idea that I pitched in front of my class. I won a DVD of a movie and beat everybody out that had secular ideas. So I was like, wow, that's cool. My teacher encouraged me to start an LLC, and I basically came up with this idea where I wanted to make a Christian game with the Unreal 2 engine because it was back in 2006. We got 50 of the students from my school to come over to my house. We gave them extra credit for credit course for the school. Bought 8 computers and made a trailer and a little playable demo, and got about $150,000 in funding at that point in 2006. Unfortunately, I learned real quickly about overhead, which no idea about, and funding was like gone. But during that time, we went around the circuit and pitched to publishers and tried. We had this great idea. We want to do it for $7 million. Wanted to do this and put it out there for everybody, the whole wide world. And thought we had a wonderful idea. Still think it was a wonderful idea, but at a certain point, I went dark and real quiet. For the last 10 years, I've been doing video game design in the secular industry, but have been quietly listening and learning as much as I can because I want to, again, revisit doing a Christian game. But the spectrum of the way the games are made now is way different than 10 years ago. And so, to answer your question about how do I overcome it, it's learning about design, learning about how games are made now, how you approach it, how investment is going to be looked at, and that kind of stuff. And it's there's no formula, I think, that's solid for it. But there is something that we all need to just try to almost recklessly and cautiously at the same time approach, and not be afraid of, and continue to try. We continue to make games and try to make Christian games or even games that are themed like so. That's my opinion.
I appreciate it. Anybody else in the panel want to comment on overcome?
I had two completely unrelated, really major issues to overcome. One of them is financing, which when I first started out, I figured out I needed about $6 million. That was in 2003. I need about triple that now. But so I went to the small business organization in Yamhill County, and they basically told me, well, after the dot-com crash, you're never going to get the money, so you might as well just give up or start a nonprofit, but you're never going to get money as a profitable company. And so I was like, okay, great, now what do I do? And I was also a guild leader in an MMO that I was playing, and some of my friends are like, well, you get all these people to help you do raids, why don't you get them to help you make a game? I was like, well, that's an interesting idea. And so I started asking my friends in the game, hey, you want to make a game? And that's how I found my first volunteers. So that's sort of how I overcame partially that. Funding is still a problem. Financing is absolutely still a problem. Volunteers can't work full-time. The other issue I had was terrain. The design for Visions uses real-world data, satellite data of the Mediterranean, and it does not work in a segregated zone-off thing. It needs to be seamless, and it needs to be huge. And terrain was consistently a problem through every iteration of Torque that we tried. In 2006, Big World was $1 million engine, and it was completely out of my reach. And so we didn't really get access to that. It was actually available in 2010, but I didn't have $300 then. And I actually thought I needed the $3,000 one because of my experience with Torque. I was like, no, I need the full license, not enough $3,000. So then Torque failed me. Like, they broke our game entirely, and there was no going back. And so we either had to cancel the project or find a new engine. Those were our choices. And so we tried Hero for about a month. That was not an option for us that I won't go into right now. And then I had an opportunity. Somebody said, I will give you $300 if you will get Big World. I was like, sure. And so in January 2012, we switched to Big World, and it works. It's what we need. It solved the terrain problem. It solved the networking problem. It solved the graphics problem. It is instant. On startup, you can create a character and log in, like, right out of the box. So now all we have to do is add content and the core elements, like my design. But which is the hard part. But it just, that was how we came at it.
Works.
Yeah, but it's taken such a long time to get there, but that's, persistence, I guess, would be the major answer to that question. Overcome through the sheer determination and insanity.
You're on. But you have to stand up. They may not be able to hear you.
So this is especially to those of you who are in or have worked in larger companies. How do you create the margin between your work life and your home life?
Okay, so Katie, I think you should start off with that one.
Okay, sorry, can you repeat just the end comment?
How do you create the margin between your work life and your home life?
I think I'm the worst one to answer for this because most of my time is spent at work. So I really struggled with this myself. I think eventually I ended up having to say, like, I'm going to come at this time and leave at this time, and if you have a problem with that, well, I am very bad at self-control.
It's not enough to make a good Christian game. And it's not enough to make a good Christian game company. If this is going to go and be what you described, that means it's got to be a culture. And cultures require generational continuity, which means, in my mind, the biggest piece of that is a father spirit. And the spirit of a father is to see his children exceed him. The spirit of a boss is to have his children lift him up. It's not about me. It's about how I can sow into the people who come behind. And being first isn't being better. It's just a role, right? And so I think it was Newton who talked about how he stood on the shoulders of giants, right? Like, everything is about what comes back downstream, and that's what creates a culture that lasts for generations and generations. And so generosity of spirit, I think, is a really critical piece that has to go beyond you, your project. It has to go beyond your vision. And it has to be into other people who don't have your vision. But that's not important. What's important is that they know God, and that they are as much children of God as you are. And so there's this thing about everything that God gives me, I need to be able to share back out, right? I think one of the rules of the kingdom is you only get to keep what you're willing to give away. And to be honest, when we're passionate about our project, that's really, it's not that it's difficult to share, it's that I'm focused, right? And so I think what's difficult is to put my head up and look around. And I can't remember who asked the question about what was the thing that needed to be overcome. And I know for me, like, the biggest thing that had to be overcome was permission, because so many people are telling me you can't do what you're trying to do. Like, either whether in the secular world or the Christian world, like, what you're doing is not possible, stop it. The way I overcome it was just I'm a stubborn jerk. Which is, sometimes that's a role, right? Sometimes someone just has to beat their head on the wall until the bricks fall.
God is stubborn.
And God is stubborn.
I prefer persistence.
And I think that's where
Tenacious is another good one.
tenacity sounds good. That sounds much more holy. And I think
I
that,
was tenacious once, so
right on.
I think everybody here is at least a little tenacious.
So I think that it's been said lots of times that what makes Cgdc special and different is that it really feels community oriented as opposed to project oriented. Everyone's excited about their stuff. Everyone's excited about their project, but I come here to talk to people, right? I come here to share and to invest, and how can we work? And I made this poor girl cry yesterday. Like, it's just but it's about heart, right? It's about, like, seeing what's in people's lives and how can I invest in that. And so I think for me that's the thing. That's the heart of the Father. That the more we reflect that, the more the world sees that, the more we see it in each other.
And actually, Kevin, so let me ask you this. When you're talking to churches, is discipleship coming up at all?
Well, that's actually how we got into this in the first place. We're coming from that end of it. We're trying to look at what are those core challenges facing the church, and we're working our way back to the solutions. Now, our mechanism for facilitating and shepherding that solution execution is the Center of Innovation.
Right, but internally in your church, you were saying. may ask internally.
I'm saying, so your question though, the people that I'm engaging on, I'm starting with pastors, faith leaders,
Right.
and so we've kind of been working our way back to tactically, how do we, address those challenges? And I think, kind of to Chris's point, I would say to your specific question, it's the mission, it's the core mission that brings us here. And if we are not actively centered on what that core mission is, I'm talking about the church mission. I don't think we're really going to see, visible change that's impacting the lives of people around us. So it's got to start with the core mission of the church, which is Christ, right? We're all nodding our heads. But that's what brings us into synergy together. We're united in the heart of Jesus. But unless we are, if we're messing around with, doing things we shouldn't be doing, there's, all these things in our spiritual life that aren't, God's bringing conviction, but we're rejecting that and not responding in the way. Then I think it's going to be difficult for us as a body, a united body, to begin to have meaningful impact in our communities. So that's kind of where I see. I think it's consistent with what you're saying.
Ryan? Okay, Ryan, go first.
Yeah, a few things I've been thinking about is, I think one, I think you need, as a creator, to be speaking out of your revelation and not beyond your revelations. And what I mean by that is that I think certain times in our lives we have a certain knowledge that God gives us and certain revelation that He gives us. And that may be through life experience, or that might be through reading scripture, or that might be whatever. We also have different parts of the body, right? We have our teachers, and we have our preachers, and we have our evangelists, and we have our pastors, and all those different roles within the church. And so I think a lot of times when it comes to this industry, we tend towards the teacher. And so I hear, personally, this is my perception, of course I have my own little soapbox right now because of my personal experience, but what I'm seeing is a lot of tendency towards teaching. And what I think is, for us to be a functioning body, we need to have all of the offices of the church represented. And so I think if we're going to have teachers, then let it be the teachers. And if you're a young teacher, then we better be bouncing these ideas off of older teachers. And in seeking wisdom and revelation in that regard, because you have a much higher responsibility as a teacher, at what you're teaching. And I think if it's an evangelist, or if you're a preacher, or if you're encouraging, or if you're pastoring, like, those are different functions, right? And so your project should reflect that. Like, if you're more of a pastor type, then your project is going to reflect the heart of the matter, more than the law of the matter, And so for me, I think that for one, if you have something to say within the revelation that God has given you, and that's a piece that's worth sharing. And so I would say that, like, I think a lot of times we can't do this, full study on the book of 1 Samuel, that we don't have anything to offer, But I mean, I think if you were to really look beyond, like, let's make a David and Goliath game, wouldn't that be cool? Like, let's look at the heart of David, and let's look at what he did and what he didn't do, and let's take that from our personal life and really understand the fullness of that, not just from studying the scripture, but also how it comes to our life. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think that as a body, we need to have all those parts represented, and that we need to be firing on all those cylinders, and that we need to be seeking wise counsel from each other. I love that there are people here that are working through their faith, and they're working through their theology, and they're bouncing it off of people, like they're speaking. This is where I'm at, this is my revelation, this is what I'm working through, what do you think? And I think that when we're willing to do that, when we're willing to submit that to each other, like, prophet, subject to the prophet, sort of thing, that we're going to, like, protect ourselves from running into error. So,
I'd like to respond to what you talked about with churches. I find a big problem in our churches that they're not culturally relevant. The church moves slow. They want to be very careful. They don't want to make mistakes. And so as a rule, a lot of people in the church are looking at things that was pertinent 20 years ago. And that's all across a lot of different things. And so how to coming together the minds, I think, is like you. And I think Toman last year, y'all know who I'm talking about. Jacob Toman, he's doing some missionary work between church and culture. And I think those are just the points that's going to help bring it forward. You have anything else you want to respond to that with?
Well, I do have a particular way of thinking about persuasion, which is, I suppose it's more of an art than it is a tactic. But that's something that we've tried to incorporate in our program. But I see pastors, I guess, to my point, is pastors are a stakeholder in the way I view them. We're trying to shift the needle in the way people think about storytelling as it pertains to the biblical narrative. And we think games is an avenue to do that. So how do we persuade the broader church to embrace that and actually get behind it? And I in my talk on Thursday, I made the point that I don't really like the fact that there aren't pastors at this conference. I think there needs to be an intentional outreach to get pastor leadership at this kind of a conference, because that's how they start to gain understanding. When they hear from people that are in the industry. Otherwise, until that happens, there's always going to be this disconnect, right? And so, anyway, but my point is that I've centered all of our conversations, probably 90% of our conversations, on pastors first. Then we move to parents, because we see them as maybe another degree of stakeholder level. But it always starts with the pastors, because families who attend churches, they're going to take the credibility of their pastor, right? And so if we have pastors on board with what we're trying to do, then we can start to see the slow shift in the way people, begin to kind of get behind what we're doing. Some of that, I think, kind of goes to the first question about how do we overcome some of those challenges, and I think that's another part of it is making sure you can understand who your stakeholders are for your project and starting with them first. What are the things that they find challenging, or things that they're trying to solve, or things that are important to them, and can your game or story or book or movie or whatever it is that you're trying to do on the solution side, how can it support what they feel is compelling or necessary? And so
I appreciate that. We got down to 5 minutes. I'm gonna give you guys a 5-minute warning on that part.
Actually, it started at
So
11:15.
I'll let you table that part real quick, and we'll get back to that afterwards. Does anybody have one last question that can be answered in 140 characters or less?
Okay.
Okay, Tomas?
Probably, yeah. So as an employer, I employ a number of people working in game software and stuff. I'm familiar with Fred Brooks' work in the Mythical Man Month, and he talks about, if your project's behind, adding more people, doesn't help. So coming from an industry experience, everybody knows about crunch in the industry. I just wanted to know, does crunch really help or not in your experience?
Okay, so those of you back there, does crunch really help or not getting a project done? So 2 sentences, 140 characters.
No.
My answer is yes.
To an extent, you cannot. Yes, that's the too. You can't death march people. I think you have to. You will be. I mean, that's literally a term that we where it's called you will be working until you collapse. You have to have we will be working overtime for 2 weeks. We will be working for a very, very definite period of time. I think when you don't have clear parameters on your project, clear parameters on timelines and everything, that's when it's irrelevant. You can't do it. I think you really have to have very clear parameters.
When the producer says crunch, no, doesn't help. when the group has a synergy and is in the zone, it helps.
Okay. Can I put a dovetail on that?
military has published research specifically based on like World War II, Korean War, that kind of thing, long studies about when and how much effective the body breaks down, when to put crunch and how to pay it back over time, because you always have to, at about a 1.5 ratio of the crunch time.
So when it comes down to milestones and you want to hit that milestone, sometimes crunch, you don't even have a choice. You just got to do it to get it done so that you can fulfill your promises.
In 2008, when we released charts and we wanted to release it at Cgdc, that we wanted like Cgdc to be our release day, we had 4 days of crunch where we worked 20 hours a day in order to get that done by the day Cgdc started. If we hadn't done that, we wouldn't have released since.
That's why you were grumpy.
I was tired.
Was it worth it?
I think it was. It was really awesome because that was the only time we actually had our team here together and we were able to sort of celebrate. Look what we did. This is cool.
Okay, so Kelly,
Okay, super fast question for people working in the industry who specifically are at a corporation and have some sort of steady job. For people, okay, I'm just being honest here. No offense to everyone else. All right, for people interested in entering the industry, what is your job title? What is your average salary?
I'm gonna, yeah, let's say the salary thing's a big taboo. There's a, some of us are literally under an NDA that we can't.
Okay, what's your job title then?
Right, but so I'm currently a senior level designer, and it's kind of mostly actually doing weapons design stuff, even though I'm a level designer. And GammaSutra.com has just published a salary survey that'll get you really good information about average. Yeah. So.
Or Chris, do you want to do the 1 million?
There was something, I think it came from Game Dev magazine a couple years back, that they showed that there was a negative correlation in coding between education and salary, which freaked a lot of people out. Like the more you learn, the less you make. That's a drag. Give us some truth.
I can answer it from a QA perspective, which is game testers are usually minimum wage. It's always the lowest paid of any QA skill set, always, every time, by a large margin.
So did everybody do their position? Software engineer, Nintendo, look at the Gamma Sutra average salary.
Yeah.
And then deduct some because you're one.
Yeah, actually, I think they didn't have the charts in there.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
No, she's right, you're right.
for those without hair, there's actually a little bit of to shine.
That's so true. It's okay though, because we get all the college scholarships.
That's true.
STEM careers.
That actually raises a really good question, and I'll ask it. So if you, let's say, for instance, that you could arrange or you could make do what you wanted with the Christian game industry. How would you change it so that women were, I don't want to say equal, but or that so that women had the kind of equality that you think should be there? Like, what is it that we could do differently that they're not doing in the game industry?
Pay them.
That's a speech on its own, right?
Yeah, I feel like that would have to be a talk on its own.
Actually, we have time. Where's Tim? Where do we have next?